Let's talk about this.
This program with one of two Buzzfeed reporters behind a report that, if true, meant that federal investigators had evidence that the President of the United States committed a serious crime and potentially an impeachable offense. CNN had not independently confirmed the story, nor had any other news organization. And just a few moments ago, we learned that Buzzfeed was going to pull their reporter from the program because Robert Mueller's office was about to weigh in. Well, that office has weighed in, and it is something in itself. Before getting into exactly what Mueller's office has now said, and they rarely ever say anything on the record, here's the essence of what the Buzzfeed report was. The headline read, President Trump directed his attorney, Michael Cohen, to lie to Congress about the Moscow Tower project. Earlier today, neither the president nor the White House categorically denied the substance of it. By this afternoon, though, that line had changed. Rudy Giuliani, the president's TV lawyer, calling the report categorically false. Press Secretary Sarah Sanders echoed that line.
Did the president direct Michael Cohen to lie to Congress?
Look, that's absolutely ridiculous. I think that the president's outside counsel addressed this best and said in a statement earlier today that's categorically false.
Well, now, in a very rare move, the special counsel's office has weighed in. CNN's Sarah Murray joins us now with that and all the other late developments. So what did the special counsel's office say? And this just happened.
It did just happen, Anderson. And as you pointed out, it's remarkable that they issued a statement like this. But here's what it says from Peter Carr, the spokesman for the special counsel. Buzzfeed's description of specific statements to the special counsel's office and characterization of documents and testimony obtained by this office regarding Michael Cohen's congressional testimony are not accurate. And remember, Anderson, this story, it's sourced to, federal law enforcement officials, but it also said that there were all of these documents, that there were interviews, that there were witnesses. And that is really what backed up this notion that the president had tried to get Michael Cohen to testify to something that just wasn't true in front of Congress. And now the special counsel is pretty unequivocally saying, we have documents and witness statements, but they don't back up what BuzzFeed is saying in the story.
And there were two reporters on the BuzzFeed story. We were supposed to talk to one of them. They said that they had two sources on the records, unnamed sources in federal law enforcement, who I believe they claimed that they had seen some of these documents.
Yeah, that's right. I think they said their sources had reviewed some of these documents, but the BuzzFeed reporters had not personally reviewed them. And Anderson, this is a story that's kind of stumped a lot of us during the day and until late last night, because no one else has been able to confirm this story. No one else was able to get their hands on any of these documents that apparently backed up this story. And I think the same, is true of the BuzzFeed reporters. They didn't put anything else further out corroborating it in terms of the underlying evidence. But I think this statement really shows you what a difficult position the special counsel's office was in today. We know the Justice Department, that includes the special counsel's office, does not like to comment on anything, regarding an ongoing investigation. That's what got James Comey into so much trouble when he was leading the FBI. But in the wake of this BuzzFeed story, we saw so many lawmakers, Democratic lawmakers, going out there today and saying, we need to know if this is true or not. If this is true, we need to see these underlying documents, because the president instructing someone to lie to Congress, the president obstructing justice, is grounds for impeachment. And I think that this sort of drumbeat we saw from lawmakers is part of what put pressure on the special counsel to do something so extraordinary. I mean, as you pointed out, they almost never comment. Last year, they wouldn't even tell the New York Times what one of their prosecutors was having for lunch around the Manafort trial. That's how little they want to comment on these things.
Yeah, Sarah Murray, appreciate it. I want to go next to the White House, seen as Pamela Brown. Pam, you heard Sarah Sanders categorically deny the report this afternoon, quoting Rudy Giuliani. Has there been any reaction since the special counsel's office weighed in?
Not publicly, but I think it's safe to say that the president will likely tweet about this very soon, Anderson, because this is vindication from what White House officials have been saying throughout the day here since early this morning, that they have been saying that this is false. Initially, you heard some of the White House officials come out and attack the credibility of BuzzFeed, attack the idea of leaking from law enforcement officials. And then as the day went on, Sarah Sanders, as you point out, the press secretary, then came out and said it's categorically false. Rudy Giuliani, the president's attorney, said the same thing. She was echoing the sentiment from what we heard from Rudy Giuliani. And so now, in an extraordinary move, Anderson, the special counsel spokesman, Peter Carr, is coming coming out and essentially saying that there is nothing to back up this BuzzFeed report that the president directed Michael Cohen, his former attorney, to lie to Congress, and that there are Trump Organization documents to back it up. Again, as Sarah pointed out, that is extremely rare for the special counsel to do it, but also this story from BuzzFeed certainly caught a lot of attention because of the implications for possible impeachment, as Sarah pointed out, suborning perjury.
So since Trump has been elected, it's been like a constant thing, like, oh, we're going to impeach him, like, oh, you know, Mueller's investigating, blah, blah, blah. But, like, if there was something to find, wouldn't he have found it already? I'm all for holding people accountable and investigating if there's something there. But is there something there? And how much money is being wasted on the Mueller investigation? Let's see. From what I remember, it was like 8 million or something. Let's see, like this. Oh, this is from December. Wow. Is this? Mueller probe cost $25
Donald
million.
Trump has changed his.
So far, report says it's pulled in $48 million from tax
Story several times during the Russia.
Oh, shut up! I'm not trying to play you. In the first 16 months, according to CNBC, Special Counsel's Office released its new expenditure report Friday, which revealed that 6 months between the beginning of April through September cost about $4.5 million. More than half of the total cost is attributed to personnel compensation and benefits. Mueller has filed more than 100 criminal charges. Wait, how is it paying for itself with the probe leading to monetary estimated gains of $48 million? Through the tax evasion, the investigation revealed. Huh. Interesting. So maybe it's a good thing, even though they're not finding anything. Forfeit assets that amount to between $42 million and $46 million. Oh, so it's Manafort that Manafort avoided paying more than $15 million in taxes by laundering $60 million from pro-Russian Ukrainians. Whoa. So, I mean, the guys around Trump were found to be guilty, but they haven't really found anything on Trump himself. So this BuzzFeed story, you know, was based on anonymous sources. And it's just kind of hilarious that Mueller came out, Mueller's office came out themselves and said that it's just false. And then there was so much hype, like, oh, he's finally going to get impeached. This is it. Bro, his term is almost done. I mean, just, you know, if he commits a crime, okay, but you're really trying to just reach. This is so politically motivated. And here's the thing, if Trump gets impeached, who's going to be the president? Mike fucking Pence. Total neocon. He's going to ramp up the war on terror if he gets put in. And good luck finding something on Mike Pence. So, you know, Trump, he made a deal yesterday. He announced a deal that he was going to he announced a new deal for the Democrats in order to get the wall, started. Well, about 100 something miles have already begun construction, but to fund the rest of it, he has this proposal, and also to reopen the government. So that includes $800 million in humanitarian aid, $805 million in anti-drug trafficking, extending the temporary status for certain illegals by like a few years, and also starting the path to legalization for like 3,000 something DACA recipients. Also, like an asylum program for refugee kids, illegal minors, but for asylum in their home countries apparently. So it sounds like somewhat of a fair deal for the Democrats to get their, he's compromising on the DACA thing, which he was against. So we'll see if the Democrats will accept that. So right now we're looking at he's saying that he has said that he wouldn't mind keeping the government shut down for months and years. But here's the thing: not only the federal workers are not getting money, but in February the SNAP, EBT, food stamp benefits are gonna run out of money, and that leads us into the next video. And we're gonna have to speed up here so that we can get because we're already over time right now.
Hey, what's going on, guys? So
gotta eat and have some breakfast.
this government shutdown continues, and now they're talking about, well, they're not just now talking about it, but obviously the potential for SNAP benefits and EBT cards to lose their funding is becoming more and more of a reality as we go on. They're talking February. I'm not exactly sure if that means February 1 or, February 1 hits, you got a week, go get whatever it is you need to get. So this is basically just a video about some common sense preparedness for this situation for everybody. Even if you don't live in the inner city, there are people on welfare and benefits and things like that from every walk of life, every skin color, every religion that lives in the most affluent subdivision right on down to, crack row or whatever. So first thing, number one, is realize that if these riots happen, if there are people that are out there looking to supplement this because now they've lost it, it could be your next door neighbor, or it could be 30 miles away in the city or 100 miles away. Okay, so this all applies to all of us. Now, a lot of what I'm about to talk about is really not anything new in preparedness, but it's as certain things loom over us and we have some forewarning that, hey, there's going to be riots. If the SNAP benefits end, people are going to snap. They've already said it. We're going to riot. We're going to go off. And that's because they don't know any other way to react, right? Some people are going to continue to be humble and just roll with the punches. Maybe they ask their neighbor for some food or something like that before they steal it, or a family member. I don't know. But you know that there's going to be a certain amount of people, a certain amount of population that's going to riot, and it's going to be violent, and it's probably not going to be real good if you're in that situation. So unless you're on some serious off-grid retreat where you very, very rarely ever leave that retreat, some of this may not apply to you. But if you're a person, especially a person that travels for business, or you use your vehicle or a company vehicle and you do a lot of work in and around cities or big towns or things like that, and you find yourself there on a regular basis, a lot of this really pertains to that type of person. And then people kind of in those like surrounding suburbs that are pretty close to those bad parts, of the city. Like, hey, 4 blocks this way, it's all gumdrops and roses. 4 blocks this way, it's crack needles and heroin bags on the ground. So anyway, let's talk about our physical body. Our bone bag is number one.
So you get the point. You should be doing this anyway, but you should always have a stash of shelf-stable food available. Freeze-dried food, canned food. You can get everything you need on Amazon or whatever other site. You can get some stuff like this, figure out what's, look at the ingredients, figure out what makes the most sense for you and your budget. I bought one of these recently, the food storage, Augustin Farms, because it was highly rated. But it is just a lot of carbs and sodium, which is what you're going to see in a lot of these packs. If you get the cheaper ones, they're not going to be the best ingredients. If you want, if you want something with more protein, obviously you're going to have to pay more, There's canned food you can get. Like I bought some canned beef the other day. I bought some of this stuff. It's $5 a can for 14 ounces. It's whatever you can afford, as long as you have something that is ready to go. And if it's freeze dried or something, you need to have a portable stove in case your gas or electricity gets cut off. There's different portable stoves out there to cook these things with. You could get something like this with propane. One stove that I want to get that I've seen. Shout out to Compa LOL on Twitch. Follow him on Twitch. He gave me a heads up about BioLite, and this is so fucking cool. So they got these stoves that you can just put let's see, camp stove. You can just put twigs and stuff in there. If you could put in raw materials in there, it'll burn it. You can burn it easily in there, cook things on top of it, and you could even charge different devices as a USB in there. I want to get one of these, not the camp stove, but the base camp. The base camp. See, the base camp converts heat into usable electricity for large format cooking and charging, using only fallen branches or small pieces of firewood. Make wood-fired meals and charge devices all at the same time. It's a smart alternative to fossil fuel stoves, creating an elevated cooking fire that burns smarter than any fire you're used to. So it's got a 2200 milliamp hour battery with 5-watt USB charge out. Burns solid biomass. So you just need a fire starter, or maybe some lighter fuel fluid just to get it started. But it'll burn in there. It's designed so that you can do this, and even if it's a little bit windy or whatever, and you've got your charge right there. It's a little bit expensive, but like I said, there's all kinds of stuff. You got different options here that you can use. Make sure you have a backup option so that because if you have a bunch of freeze-dried food, you're gonna need water and you're gonna need something to heat it with. So you're also gonna want some portable filtration. This is what I use at home, but I don't know what they this removes a lot of stuff. Obviously this might not be the best solution if it's a crisis situation, but you gotta shop around. It's tough finding a good filtration method. The Life Straw is good for emergencies. Life Straw is just all self-contained. You could literally just stick the straw in a rancid pond and start, it'll automatically, as soon as you suck through it, it's filtering as you suck through it. They got different devices there. This is actually a good one as well. I should probably get that one, because you can just put it through, I think, the top, and you kind of hang it up, put the water to the top, and you spray it down. There's also tablets, water potable tablets, purification tablets. Yeah, water purification tablets. That's when you really have nothing else, you can put some water purification tablets into some nasty water and it'll be drinkable. So make sure you have that. Make sure you have first aid. There's different first aid kits you can get. Make sure you have that. Make sure you have flashlights. Make sure you have some kind of protection, some kind of self-defense. I know in places like New York City, you're very limited on what you can use to protect yourself. But you should definitely have something at home. I've got a few different things at home to protect myself at home that are legal. And I encourage you to do some research, find out what is legal in your area so that you can protect yourself, because your number one investment should be in your own body, your own health. And in the event of a crisis, you're gonna really You're going to need that stuff. So make sure you set aside some money, and just like you have a savings account where you put some money in, invest in the things you would need if, let's say, the economy were to crash, the power were to go out, or, for example, your SNAP benefits if they were to get cut off. Do whatever you can to set aside stuff, canned food. And the thing is, this used to be a part of American culture after World War II, or even before World War II, because you were in the Cold War. There was always the threat of nuclear war, so people had to be prepared, and that's what people did. They saved. They had more of a stock of food and supplies, and were generally more self-sufficient. But actually, I meant to get into. I meant to get into when we're talking about the Buzzfeed story, that there's all this hype, all this like, oh, Donald Trump is embedded with the Russians. Well, you know what is the GDP of Russia? First of all, 1.5 trillion. What is the GDP of Canada? 1.6 trillion. Canada has more money, is worth more than Russia. So think about that. That's kind of gives you some perspective on how powerful Russia is. Yes, Russia has nuclear weapons, but they're also, economically they are struggling. And when we're talking about being in bed with the Russians, the mainstream media, other than the New York Times in this report, fails to point out that Hillary Clinton made a deal with the Russians, the Uranium One Deal, which gave the Russians, a fifth of the nuclear weapons or nuclear power. Let's see. Detailed how the Russian Atomic Energy Agency Rosatom had taken over a Canadian company with uranium mining stakes, like a fifth of their uranium is what I meant to say, stretching from Central Asia to American West. The deal made Rosatom one of the world's largest uranium producers and brought Putin closer to his goal of controlling much of the global uranium supply chain. The untold story behind that story is one that involves not just the Russian president, but also a former American president and a woman who would like to be the next one. So this came out when? In 2015. So before Trump was elected. So beyond mines in Kazakhstan that are among the most lucrative in the world, the sale gave the Russians control of 1/5 of all uranium production capacity in the United States. Since uranium is considered a strategic asset with implications for national security, the deal had to be approved by a committee composed of representatives from a number of United States government agencies. Among the agencies that eventually signed off was the State Department, then headed by none other than Mr. Clinton's wife, Hillary Rodham Clinton. As the Russians gradually assumed control of Uranium One in 3 separate transactions from 2009 to 2013, Canadian records show a flow of cash made its way to the Clinton Foundation. So while they were making this deal, it took some years to get this process, through. During that time, a flow of cash made its way to the Clinton Foundation. Uranium One's chairman used his family foundation to make 4 donations totaling $2.35 million. Those contributions were not publicly disclosed by the Clintons, despite an agreement Mrs. Clinton had struck with the Obama White House to publicly identify all donors. Other people with ties to the company made donations as well. And shortly after the Russians announced their intention to acquire a majority stake in Uranium One, Mr. Clinton received $500,000 for a Moscow speech from a Russian investment bank with links to the Kremlin that was promoting Uranium One stock. At the time, both Rosatom and the United States government made promises intended to ease concerns about ceding control of the company's assets to the Russians. Those promises have been repeatedly broken, records show. So if you want to look that up, New York Times, Uranium One, you can read the whole article. And it doesn't necessarily implicate Hillary directly, but it does leave the question open like, hey, she was on this committee that approved this deal for the Russians to get 1/5 of our uranium capacity, of U.S. uranium capacity through this deal. And at the same time this deal was being made, over a few years' time, the Clinton Foundation received $2.35 million. And you got to think about that old saying of follow the money if you want to know what's really going on in politics. So that's kind of interesting, isn't it? Let's see, there's another article by the Washington Post. Yes, the Clintons should be investigated. So meanwhile, with this huge investigation, 2 years into this huge investigation, Mueller's in, and Hillary Clinton has never been investigated. So why is that? How come she hasn't been investigated? Ever since Watergate, the mantra of all major corruption investigations has been to follow the money. Well, Americans of all stripes should be outraged by the fact that both Democrats and Republicans in Washington are up to their eyeballs in Kremlin cash. Russian money found its way into the pockets of not only Trump advisors like Paul Manafort and Rick Gates, who were recently indicted by special counsel Robert Mueller, but also Democratic power lobbyist Tony Podesta, Bill Clinton, and the Clinton Foundation. This should suggest to objective observers that Russia was using its money to influence both sides in order to advance the Kremlin's interests. And it means that any full and impartial investigation of Russia's efforts to influence our political process needs to follow the Russian money flowing into the coffers of the Clintons, their foundation, and their top associates. This is from the Washington Post. Okay, so in total, $145 million went to the Clinton Foundation from interests linked to Uranium One, which was acquired by the Russian government nuclear agency, Rosatom. So, this is very suspicious. If you want to read more about that, just look up this title. Yes, the Clintons should be investigated, Washington Post.